Bob is a person of faith. I think he's motivated, energetic, highly organized, he's benevolent. Bob is a true servant leader. Expects excellence out of himself, and he wants other people to have that sense of excellence in their own lives.
When people are very successful, it's easy for them to forget about other people. And it's easy for them to forget that all God's children don't have shoes. Platt is the kind of person you don't have to convince of that. He knows that. And he knows that this is something that needs to be done.
I got a call one day from a person I didn't know, Gordon Bing, who became a friend. And I told Gordon, fundraising is right down by root canals on the list of things that I want to do. Gordon is quite persistent, and he took me over to MAM's old facilities, showed me around and talked about what he thought could be done, and he convinced me, and I bought in.
Platt recognizes that he has been really fortunate. He sees his responsibility to, in turn, help others who are less fortunate. And I think that's what kind of drew him to MAM, because MAM is so good at doing that, at giving people the tools that they need and education and the support to be able to thrive and lead a productive life.
John Rasco, who is the president of MAM, introduced me to the concept of there being a change and they needing someone to help, possibly be on the board. And as a result of that conversation, and 1 hour before having heard a sermon on personal responsibility, I said yes to the possibility of being on the board.
He was influenced by people around him in the church to give back. And the more successful his company was, he kind of became a conduit for God to kind of start sharing it and helping. I just have to think it came from God.
MAM at that time was a resale shop that also generated funds that were dispersed into that community for people with problems and encountering issues in their lives.
The foundations had to be convinced not only that the mission was good, but that the structure that MAM was going to put in place was going to be sufficient to bring it to where it needed to be and make the investment worthwhile.
When Platt was doing this, everybody knew MAM is raising the bar. This is not going to be a survival act. This is going to be a flourishing act. Leadership is everything.
What we see today is a result of what Bob did. I think that him chairing the capital campaign to make sure that MAM was financially stable and carried into the future.
You performed a minor miracle, quite honestly, in raising that additional money in 2008, 2009 in the depths of the recession. And our goals were more clearly formed.
All of a sudden it became more than a resale shop. Honestly, just looking back on that beginning versus what's going on there today is just mind-boggling.
The Bible says we're to give honor to those whom honor is due. And honor is due these two men.
He's probably saying, I don't deserve this award. He deserves it. He and Platt both deserve this award.
Doesn't feel like he deserves it. There's a lot other people that are more worthy.
Platt feels the same way. I think he just doesn't like being in the spotlight.
Neither does Bob. No.
I don't think they'll really want to be out there on that stage.
No, Bob will need a cattle prod to get him out there.
Platt as well.
What do you think we take off?
That'd be a good idea, actually, but I think we have to go out there.
Well, why don't you go first?
Well, why don't you go first? I was going to let you go out there.
Let's get it over with.
All right, let's go.
Wow. Thank you, Charity, for sharing your amazing story with us. You remind us that we all have something special inside just waiting to be discovered. Charity's superpower is definitely resilience. What's your superpower? Flying through space at the speed of sound, invisibility, or going back in time to a moment when life was simpler? Mine is imagination. My imagination is vivid and vibrant. It takes me places I never dreamed possible. Today, I imagine a world where there is no pandemic, no masks, no vaccinations, no losses of jobs, lives, or liberty. This may feel hard because over the last year and a half, every one of us has suffered. Some of us have lost a job or dealt with a struggling business. Many, like me, have experienced the deep pain of losing a loved one. It has been overwhelming. As the pandemic has drawn out, our hope has been buried underneath layers of uncertainty, frustration, and fear. For the first time in many of our lives, or at least the first time in a long time, we have experienced the isolation felt every day by those who live on the margins, without the resources, connections, or voice to impact their own future. The margins have come closer to home. No longer are those living on the margins just people giving their testimonies at events like these. They're our family, our neighbors, our colleagues, and our friends. We've experienced suffering and perhaps some of the feelings of shame and disgrace that so often come with it. Noted author and fellow Houstonian Brené Brown describes shame as different than guilt or the feeling that you've done something wrong. Shame is the overwhelming sense that you are a mistake. And shame has the power to cast doubt on every action and decision you make with a crippling effect on your life. Imagine that. I imagine a Houston where every person living on the margins has hope. Hope, because for every hard situation, there's an opportunity for help and healing. Hope, because no matter how hard life gets, you are never alone. I imagine a community filled with connectors and conveners, sharing their lives with their neighbors through tangible acts of love, where actions speak louder than words. Yes, my imagination is bold and beautiful. I close my eyes and I imagine a world where we see each other as God sees us, as his beloved children, beautiful, full of promise and potential. And when we see the world through those divine eyes, we are truly transformed. I imagine a world where the color of your skin, the language you speak, your age, your sexuality, or your immigration status does not limit you. I imagine a reality where the lines that divide and exclude have been erased. Living on the margins is hard. Often the demands of the moment overwhelm any ability to think or plan for the future. Like for Rudy, a proud father who worked for over 10 years to provide for his kids, taking 2, sometimes 3 minimum wage jobs just to make ends meet. I remember him breaking down in tears when he told us that he had always been taught to provide for his family, but nobody had ever taught him to focus his efforts on gaining new skills and a higher paying job so that he could work less and spend even more time with his kids. You see, it only takes one person with a new way of thinking to propel a life in a new direction. One person who can see in you the potential that you cannot see in yourself. But these opportunities don't come out of nowhere. They are created when we spend time with one another, sharing our lives, our experiences, and our resources, our time, treasure, and talents. It's said that to truly love God, we must first learn to love ourselves, then learn to love those who are like us, and ultimately grow in our love for those who are different. It's a process that takes a whole lot more than the superpower of imagination. It takes time, stepping out of our comfort zone with intentionality and perseverance, an open mind, and a loving heart. At MAM, we take those steps every day, standing in the margins with those so often overlooked. We invest in our neighbors, and in the process, we learn that true compassion is found not just in service to those on the margins, but in our willingness to see ourselves as one of them, to imagine their lives as ours. It's learning to drop our judgments and seeing how compounding problems and broken systems can make it difficult, nearly impossible, to get ahead. It's understanding how a small emergency can quickly erupt into a major crisis. As we stand in the margins, we see more clearly that poverty is about so much more than money. It is families in our community, maybe even our own neighbors, that lack physical, mental, social, and spiritual health, resources we so often take for granted. At MAM, our mission is not merely to alleviate temporary symptoms of poverty. Rather, it's to facilitate a process where our most vulnerable neighbors can learn to understand their own capacity, envision a strong future, and work on a plan to sustainability. We know this can take time, sometimes years, or even generations, and we are in it for the long haul. At MAM, we know that we're stronger together. We were founded by 13 faith communities who had a deep desire to love their neighbors and a strong conviction that they could do it better together. A couple of weeks ago, I had a day with back-to-back meetings. Imagine that. And in the middle of yet another Zoom call, Luis, our custodian, stopped by outside of my office. He was gesturing through the windows. Miss Sonja, usted tiene una llanta ponchada. I had a flat tire. I thanked him and quickly glanced at my calendar. I was booked solid all day into an evening presentation. I thought, okay, I'm just gonna have to Uber and figure out the next steps when I get there. But by the time my meeting was over, I had a text message from Chantel, my assistant. You have a flat. Do you want me to ask one of the guys to put a spare on for you? Honestly, my first reaction was reluctance, stemming from my own pride and fierce sense of independence. I felt a sense of embarrassment or maybe even guilt asking for help. But I eventually gave in and handed over my keys, knowing that their help would allow me to focus on everything else that I needed to get done that day. A couple of meetings later, I had more texts. The guys checked. You didn't have a spare. I took a deep breath, but I kept reading. So Charles removed your tire, took it to a shop to get it fixed, and he put it back on your car. You're good to go for your presentation. It was in that moment that I paused, took a step back from my busy day, and I processed what had happened. Amidst my poverty of time, somebody else stood in the margin, stretched out their hand, and bridged a gap for me. Without Luis, I wouldn't have even known about my flat until it was too late to do something about it. Without Chantel and Charles and Ricardo, I would have been stressed out trying to catch an Uber and probably missed my evening presentation. But instead, I was overwhelmed with gratitude and satisfaction, not just from the relief of having my tire fixed, but from knowing that I was not alone. For those of you who know the MAM team, you probably aren't surprised. This is what we do every day. MAM is here to help people fix the flat tires in their lives. Our work is about so much more than the jobs we help people get, the English that we help them learn, or the rent that we help them pay. It's about letting people know that they are valued and that they are not alone. It's spending time with our neighbors, listening to their lives so that we can notice their flat tires and be there to offer help. Perhaps before COVID, the margins seemed far away, but today we all know somebody who is struggling to find a job or to pay rent, wrestling with their mental health, or struggling just to find hope and purpose in life. MAM's mission is to build stable families, a dynamic workforce, and vibrant communities together. We stand with those living on the margins to reinvigorate their lives with resources, skills, and confidence that they need to fulfill their goals and dreams. And in the process, we move from a place of judgment to a space of compassion and caring. Today, as I exercise my superpower, I imagine a city where nobody lives on the margins, where we all work together toward the common good, where individuals are empowered to build stable lives full of meaning and connection, where parents working hard to support their families experience the satisfaction of providing for their children's healthy development and education, where every kid grows up believing that they can achieve success. MAM activates my imagination. We bring together our community to create hope, stability, and a strong sense of belonging. When a mother loses her job, MAM is there. When a recent immigrant struggles to find their place in this immense city, MAM is there. When a family loses their home in a tragic disaster, MAM is there. When a young man believes that nobody cares about his future, MAM is there. For nearly 40 years, MAM has not only imagined a city where no one lives on the margins, we have worked hard every day to make that vision a reality. We open our doors every day knowing that somebody's life will be changed by our work. We witness the power of hope, the promise of potential, and the transformation of hearts. Yet there is still so much work to be done. For every family that MAM serves, there are dozens more who need our help. We continue to expand our capacity so that every family has access to the support that they need to build a more stable, abundant life. We will stand with those in the margins until the margins are erased. But we cannot do it alone. It will take all of us standing together. Today, I am truly blessed to be surrounded by people who care, who believe in our mission, and who join us as we stand with those on the margin. Blessed to have Charity, Ricardo and Jimena, standing in courage and sharing their stories with us. Blessed to have a board of directors who stand with us. And blessed to have volunteers and staff who stand with us. See, it doesn't matter your circumstances, capabilities, or capacity. What matters is that we all stand together. Won't you join us? Won't you stand with us? See, I told you I had a superpower. I imagined all of us standing in unity today, and here we are. Thank you so much for standing with MAM and turning our imagination into reality.